Thanks, guys. I'm super excited to be here. This is my first time here at Algolia, and it's a really cool office here. Thank you all for coming into during this rainy day. So, thank you. Tonight, we are gonna cover actually all together some of the upcoming features on the Angular platform during this year, 2018. So we will cover things like the new built-in system called Bazel. We will touch a bit about the Angular CLI schematics. And also we will cover the Angular Material CDK component dev kit. And we will also talk a bit about the observables. There is really something new happening in the observables world. And finally, we will cover a bit about two of the Angular Labs projects. Do you guys know Angular Labs? It's the experimental project on the Angular team. So Angular Element and NGIV are still experimental, but they will be landing soon in the upcoming releases. So yeah, my name is Wassim. I am a developer advocate engineer here at SFEIR, SFEIR in French. That's my actual work by day, and the rest of my time is spread across a bunch of other activities, like open source activities. For instance, I'm a developer advocate, developer expert for the Angular team and also the Google Assistant team. Also, core team member of the Angular Universal. Thanks for presenting this earlier. And also recently I joined the Node.js Foundation as a core team member for the ECMAScript module team. And my personal focus actually is the interop between Node.js runtime and the browser. And also I co-author a couple of open source libraries like ComboDoc or the Web Bluetooth library for Angular, for instance. Yeah. So if you want to talk about any of these topics, these are my current focus topics for this year and for the upcoming years. So please reach me after the talk, or you can tweet me at Manikineko. And also my Twitter DM are open, so you don't have to follow me to chat. Just say hi or whatever. All right, so before we talk about the upcoming features for this year, I have a couple of slides about the current status of the Angular Nation. So Angular is really a strong community. It's really growing like faster than AngularJS back in the days. So this is Q4 for last year, 2017, and we are now over 1 million Angular developers all across the world. So this is a great news. And currently there are more than like almost 800 meetups all across the world. So yeah, Angular is really growing, and we are all super excited about this. All right, first feature, Bazel. So Bazel actually is the open source tool released by Google. Actually, Google used inside and they refer to it as Blaze. So Blaze is the build system at Google. I mean, if you know Google, they have like one giant monorepo where they have all their products. So they have like Gmail, like YouTube product, like source code. Everything is this single giant monorepo, and they use Blaze to build it in a couple of seconds. So they recently released the tool, and they called it Bazel. And the Angular core team, they started experimenting with this tool to bring it to us, developers, so we can use it in our product. Some of the benefits of Bazel is, first of all, the speed. Actually, Bazel is capable of building like fully incremental, so you can only build exactly the code that have been changed, not all the modules, not all the files, only like single, like at the function level. And you can also like leverage it with distributed caching, and you could, for instance, have like really seconds of build time. You can also scale it, so wherever, like, if you have like any size, any like small teams, giant corporations, or even if you have multi-repo or one small repo, it scales up really, really good. Google use it inside, so they use it not only to build JavaScript or TypeScript, but they also use it to build Go and Java and other technologies. So this is really good. And also, no matter what platform are you using, it should work. So the good news is now, like recently, I mean, they have actually started it last December. The Angular framework is now built using Bazel. And I mean, the core part of the framework, but also some of the parts of the material design project. So the current status of this project is the team has managed to have like 2-second SLO, round trip development, like during round trip, when you save your file, have 2-second rebuild, incremental rebuild. Now they managed to have a fully bundled packages using Rollup and Aglify. And also, they also managed to use Bazel to build libraries and use them across project. The roadmap for Bazel next would be to use Bazel and provide all the tools for us so we can create libraries and distribute them. And also code splitting and lazy loading are being experimented right now. I think like 3 days ago, they announced they have like a working prototype. So we should expect this coming really soon. So if you guys are interested by trying Bazel, so this is a, oh, by the way, I will share my slide right now up on Twitter, so that's done. Okay, so you can click on the link, and there is like the whole document describing in details, much details, what I just said. And you could also subscribe, like fill in a form, so you can try Bazel at your corporation and also provide feedback for the Angular core team. Next, Angular schematics. Who is using Angular CLI? Oh, I expected more people actually. So the other folks, you should explain to me why you're not using the Angular CLI next. So yeah, Angular CLI, for those who doesn't know or who are not familiar with it, is a tool released by the Angular team that helps you scaffold a new project, like create a new project, an Angular project, and also use it to generate components, services, modules, anything you need for your Angular project. And also you can use it to build, test, package, link, document everything in your project. And the CLI under the hood is using like blueprints. For instance, when you need to generate a service or a component, there is a default blueprint it's provided by the Angular, by the core team. So with schematics, this is a new API coming, which is already actually in the latest version of the CLI. You could either extend the defaults. For instance, okay, say this is the default blueprint for a component, so I might use it as it is, but also add some specific features for my needs, for my corporation. Or if you decide so, you can replace everything and provide your own blueprints. And by the way, you can generate anything with schematics. You can, for instance, generate Java code or PHP code or whatever. If you're familiar with Yeoman, that's the new hot stuff. Sorry. One new command that's coming in the recent version of the Angular CLI. It's the ng update command. So with this command, you will be able to, like for now, just update your package dependencies, like TypeScript, Zone, RxJS, and the Angular packages. As you see on the screenshot, yeah, it's using the latest version of each dependency. Next, you will be able to literally migrate some of the code, actually, like have the command upgrade, for instance, from a deprecated API to a new API, at some extent, of course. Hans from the core team, the CLI core team, has wrote an excellent article about this on the Angular blog, so I recommend reading it. Next, material design component dev kit. So same question, who's using material design widgets? Okay, not lots of people again. No worries. So the Angular material is the implementation of the material design specification from Google. So you have the Polymer implementation, the Material Light CSS implementation, the Angular, like the Angular material, AngularJS material one implementation, and of course for Angular, there is another implementation. So you get lots of widgets to use in your product really simply. And that's really cool. But if you wanna, for instance, create your own widgets, you might, for instance, only need like the logic. You don't wanna care about the CSS, about the look and feel. You only want the behavior, actually, of the components. So that's what the CDK is all about. So for instance, you would only be able to use, let's say, the overlay API and use your own widget, your own CSS, your own UX, if you would. The blue ones are the upcoming behaviors, actually. And again, Jeremy from the Material Core team has wrote an article about this. Please read it. All right, next, observables. Streams everywhere. Any observable developers in the room? Okay. Yeah, that was a tricky question actually, because every Angular developer is an observable developer because you find observables and streams everywhere in Angular, in the core of Angular, if you're using, of course, RxJS, and for those who are using NGRX, which is the Redux implementation for Angular. So what's happening in the observables world? So actually, Ben from the RxJS team has wrote an open spec for this, where basically, just like to sum it up, like we want observables in the browser by default, in the DOM actually. We want to be able to use observables without any libraries, without any polyfills. So we can ship less code to browser. For instance, out of the box, we would just choose like map, filter, reduce, zip, flat map, smoosh map, if you want, without any polyfill, without any library. So for instance, imagine where you could get the reference for an image, call onload and subscribe to it, and then react to whatever you want to do. So if you're interested with this proposal, please read issue number 544 on GitHub. Please start it, watch it. And if you care, you could also reach out to your developer communities, or if you know someone working on like other browser vendors, because this is, I think this would be implemented in Chrome, but we need it to be implemented, I mean developers, we need to be implemented on the other browsers. All right. The first Angular lab project called Angular Elements. So this is Angular as custom elements. So is everyone familiar with custom elements, with web components? Okay. So web components are actually for specifications like HTML imports, HTML templates, shadow DOM, and of course custom elements. With Angular elements, you would basically take your Angular component and register it and package it as a custom element. So I have a question for you. Who can spot the Angular elements on this cheeseburger recipe? I will give you 5 seconds. All right. Actually, you can't. Because Angular elements are, like from the outside, are custom elements. That's the standard. There is nothing specific about Angular. When we interact with Angular, an Angular element component, we are just interacting with a web component, like with the browser web component, literally. So from the inside, it's Angular API, Angular context, like Angular magic happening, but from the outside, it's only custom elements. So next, you would take your, for instance, search component and register it as a custom element. So then you could, for instance, use this component in, like with React, with Vue, with JavaScript, anything that is web, without any issue, and without like a black box actually. Rob from the core team has given a talk at last year Angular Connect, so you can watch his video. That's actually the first public announcement. And he also maintains this StackBlitz demo app where he actually took the material design component widgets and he packaged them as custom elements. So this is actually a live demo. You can like really read what he has done. You have the link at the bottom. Okay, so I need to go outside of this. All right. So the proof of concept has been done, and a successful one by Rob. Now the team is experimenting, like literally currently they're experimenting Angular elements on Angular.io. So Angular.io actually is the official website, but it's also the sandbox for the Angular core team because they are experimenting a lot of things, which is really cool. And then we should expect a release. I haven't put a version number because I don't want to speak for the core team, so expect this, from my opinion, like this year. Oh, next. So the last feature would be NGIV, which is another project from the Angular Labs. Who can tell me how many renders the Angular team has written? How many versions, actually? 2? Yeah. 2.5, actually. So this is the new, like, upcoming render for Angular. Okay. So we should expect like a smaller size in our applications, and then like simpler debugging stacks on your like Chrome web browser consoles, and also faster compilation, and which is what's really like most important part for me is non-breaking changes. This would be like for us non-breaking. The roadmap, like they managed to have a hello world. Now they are like making sure the API is compatible. Next step, they wanted to try it out inside Google, like on, let's say, hundreds of projects, and then we should expect a release soon. All right. So Rob has sent, like, tweeted this couple of days, maybe a bunch of days before, where he managed to have like an Angular app that weighs 3.2 kilobytes. But this is just, again, this is an experimentation, not production ready. This guy, his or her name, actually, I don't know. He wrote a really great blog post about this NGIV renderer. So I really like highly recommend you guys reading it for much like technical details, because he went really literally like through every commit, every pull request, and he made like something of some of the like documentation. All right, so we talked about a lot of stuff. Like this is some of the upcoming features for this year. Like again, new build system, which would be integrated into the Angular CLI. Like so, we could use it like for free. Extending your blueprints with schematics. So, for instance, you could write, let's say, schematic to automatically convert modules to lazy loaded modules, like in one single command. Again, CDK in your UI components for free. Observables in the DOM. And components as like web components, and also a new renderer. All right, so the next step for you is to check this website, v6.angular. This is the roadmap for Angular 6, which should be released in the next month, like April 4th. That's the initial release date. It might change, actually. And thank you, guys. One or two, I don't know.
Okay, we got time for a couple of questions.
All right, yeah.
If people have them. Does anyone want the box? I don't have the box in my hand, so you'll have to use a mic.
No worries. Thanks for the talk.
Thank you.
Can you just explain again why is it awesome to actually declare Angular components as custom elements?
Okay, so if you're familiar with web components, the web component is the standard. Like in browser, you can use any custom elements. This is what we've been using, like video elements, articles, H1, PR paragraphs. That's the custom elements provided by the browser vendors. So with web component, we can create our own custom elements, like Algolia Search, for instance, component, or instance search. I don't know what the name of it. So for this, before, you can only do this with web component, like browser API, or some libraries that is web component compatible. So now with Angular elements, you could use Angular, like your favorite framework, to build components that you can use with any other framework, like with React again, or Vue, or just with JavaScript in like some HTML, random HTML, right? So without having to load the whole framework, the forms, the router, or anything else. Yeah? Okay. Maybe another one, and then we can eat. Oh, by the way, I brought some stickers. They are all over the table, so please feel free, take some. They're all yours.
You talk about using Blazor with Uglify and Rollup. Is it any point to like using that to package NPM packages, or is it more like a real dev environment?
So that's what the team is currently experimenting. So they managed to use Uglify and Rollup to package an app, actually. So currently, if you're using Angular CLI or Webpack, so you are using Webpack to bundle your app. So for now, I haven't heard if they like used Webpack with Bazel. I think they should probably experiment in it. So currently they're using Rollup to package the app, but I don't know if this would be the default for when it will be public. In any case, I mean, for us developers, it's like transparent. It's a black box. You just call like ng build or npm or yarn build, and you will have like all your models, your fast models, UMD, and everything else.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, big round of applause for Wassim. Thank you,
guys.